think anytime we talk about viruses, and especially an unknown type of novel virus and how it spreads, I think it's natural for there to be some sort of fear about what is spreading, how do we protect ourselves against it, what are ways that I can minimize the risk of obtaining it. And what we know about this particular type of coronavirus, we can only base it on similar coronaviruses. So SARS and MERS, these are probably two of the coronavirus types that we're a little more familiar with, have a better idea of how it spreads, how to minimize it. But I think a large part of the panic is due to we don't know a lot about it. It started in this small region in China, and now as we know, we have several cases in the US. Not only are there cases, but some of these have ended fatally. And so a lot of the panic is, what is it? How do I avoid getting it? How do people get it? How did we get here? So I think when we have these new viruses, they're spreading what seems to be very rapidly in a way that we don't know how to address or combat or even know what's going on. I think that's part of what leads to the panic. One of the areas of misinformation surrounding coronavirus is actually the fact that it's spreading faster than anything we've known, whereas it's not necessarily the case. Flu virus is very contagious. Tens of thousands of people in the US die from flu complications, flu-related complications. We know measles is extremely highly contagious. And so we know that there are viruses out there that are more contagious than coronavirus, but we understand these and we know how they work and we know how they spread, and there are vaccines that we can get to protect us. Whereas this particular coronavirus that we're dealing with, we don't have anything yet. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind as far as misinformation about such a novel virus is that there's going to be a lot of fear, which puts out a lot of, well, what might this virus be? So one of the things you'll see regarding misinformation of the coronavirus, there is a very extreme group of individuals who think that this virus was started intentionally. And unfortunately, when people put that stuff on the internet, it gains traction, whether it's true or not. And I think that's one of the things we have to be mindful of misinformation. Even though big social media giants like Facebook are tackling the misinformation that we have regarding coronavirus, regarding political agendas, one of the things we have to be mindful of is that individuals can still unknowingly pass misinformation. And we're seeing that with the coronavirus. Some individuals say it's spreading like nothing we've ever seen. That's not necessarily true. Other individuals are saying it was started as this new fad disease almost. That's not true. And so we have to be mindful of where is this information coming from? Where's the source of this information? What sort of evidence, scientific evidence, do they have to provide support for their answer? So I think the biggest correlation between misinformation and the coronavirus and misinformation about anti-vaxxers and the anti-vaccine movement, it all tends to be tied into individual personal experience. So from the anti-vaxxer side, we know that this is typically anti-vaccine movements towards the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, and rubella. And despite the overwhelming evidence, we still have individuals that have what we call anecdotal experiences. They know someone whose child was vaccinated and then they started displaying symptoms, right? But one of the things and one of the challenges we face as researchers in this area is getting people to understand the weight of statistical scientific evidence over personal anecdotal stories. And so while the coronavirus, because it's so new and because it's very isolated in certain aspects of how it's spreading, or at least people are trying to make sure it stays isolated, there's not a lot that we know about the spreading of it. So the misinformation we're seeing on the coronavirus front tends to be misinformation about its origins. The best tactic would probably just be to use science. Now, of course, I say that's the best tactic, but not everyone relies on science in the same manner. So some individuals, if they're saying, we don't know what's going on with this coronavirus, let's look up the CDC, let's look up the World Health Organization. What are these big names saying about this? On the other hand, there's a group of individuals who don't value what the CDC says. They don't value what the World Health Organization says. And so for these individuals, those approaches saying, well, just look at scientific evidence, what have we found? They might combat that by saying, well, no, these might be the individuals that started it. So when we talk about how we approach it, there's also, you have to take into account who it is that you're talking to. What is the weight that they put on science? Because as we said before, not everyone values scientific evidence or information in the same manner that they do personal anecdotal experience. So as far as correcting that misinformation, we don't have a best approach, but I always lean on the side of science as a good approach.